Thank you all for being here today. As you know, we've spent most of this year managing through an unprecedented budget reduction effort. We announced in February several steps we would take to address as much as $15 million in reductions. To recap for you, we began the current fiscal year with a structural imbalance of $10,976,000. In one-time funds, we used to cover revenue losses from an enrollment decline that we knew we'd have to address as we built the budget for 2018-19. Additional enrollment declines and cost increases make up the total. And if you need more detail, Ann will be able to walk you through that. The actions we announced today include the elimination of 10 filled staff positions and 20 vacant positions. Of those 20, 12 are faculty members and 8 are staff members. The core tenets we followed were to protect campus units most closely associated with student recruitment, enrollment, and student success. And we wanted to shield our academic programs. We also did not further reduce units in a way that would jeopardize their primary functions. You'll note the overall percentages of the reductions are borne more heavily by support units than by colleges. Again, this is our attempt to minimize reduction to the academic core. For academic units, we followed the same methods adopted by the Budget Council to allocate reductions based on multi-year enrollment and revenue trends. We did not rely on the Budget Council this round to recommend further reductions. Instead, we relied upon leaders at the division, dean, department head, or unit manager levels to construct plans for their areas. Our Phase 2 process was intentionally devolved. It was not top-down. So, the 3 strategies we employ for Phase 2 are, number 1, division and college budgets will be reduced by $5,640,000. This includes the position eliminations referenced a moment ago. We will achieve additional savings through reorganization at the administrative level. First, as Gordon Johnson, our Vice President of Information Technology, retires on June 30th, we will shift oversight of IT to an Assistant Vice President who will report to the Vice President of Finance and Administration and me. Second, in the first round of reductions, we eliminated the Chief Enrollment Officer. We now have merged the offices of Admissions, Registrar, Financial Aid, and Student Advising into Student Affairs. And although there are no specific savings attached to moving the Office of Sustainability into this new division, it does make sense to align this very student-centric function with the division most focused on student engagement. So effective immediately, the Office of Sustainability will move to the new Division of Enrollment and Student Experience. Number 2, in the 2018-19 fiscal year, we will continue our hiring slowdown efforts that to date have allowed us to capture $5.8 million in budget savings. All new vacancies will continue to be approved and reviewed by the Personnel Action Approval Committee. We plan to capture an additional $5,230,000 through this continued effort. And number 3, finally, as we continue to work toward a revised budget model, we will use institutional carry-forward funds one final time as a step down to the new funding model, which will go live on July 1st, 2019. In this process, we will wean ourselves off of the use of one-time funds to cover recurring costs. And this will help us stabilize our finances in the future. You have an attachment that outlines the reductions listed by division and college in both total dollars and percentages. And you have the reduction totals listed, including a summary of both Phase 1 and Phase 2. Once all the personnel actions are completed, we'll provide a detailed list of positions eliminated as we did before. It will take us a few days to finalize, so we'll release that information to you next week. The material we handed out includes the message I sent to our campus community earlier today as well. And with that basic summary, I'd be pleased to take your questions.
Obviously, this helps the budget. Does it hurt the university more than it helps that, though?
So anytime you go through this process, it's a difficult experience, not just for the institution, but for those involved in it. what I'm pleased about is that we followed the core tenet of doing everything in our power to protect both the academic programs and those things focused on student experience. My hope is at the end of the day, not a single student will feel a difference because of the reductions. We've really tried to focus our efforts on the areas that support instead of the core functions of academics.
Dr. Caboni, so basically this is 30 positions that are going, 10 filled and 20 vacant. Are they in any particular division, or I know there's been talk about whether departments are income producing or not. Was there a way these were selected?
So we really relied upon the deans and division heads and unit leaders to make the recommendation for what positions they thought might be eliminated. I would say there's not a pattern based upon revenue generation or expenditure, but we did try to protect those areas focused on enrollment, retention, persistence, graduation, and also academic areas. And so what you'll see when the position list is released is that they are spread across the enterprise. The other thing that I do want to mention is, as difficult as it is to eliminate 10 filled positions and 20 unfilled, you'll remember this is much, much smaller than the reductions we made in February. And I'm pleased we were able to do this instead of only looking at positions that we have today, to be able to cast that forward and continue the hiring slowdown that we put in place last October.
And I know there were about 2,100 employees previously, and then after this is done, it's still going to be close to 2,000, or is there an employment number?
So we can get that for you.
Yeah.
Essentially, though, if you put those numbers together, we've had a reduction in force of approximately 10%. That is not insignificant.
Thank you. Can you outline some of the fixed costs that you face, like pensions and contributions?
So one of the important drivers for us in this process has been the increased pension costs that we're going to face from our two state-funded and us-funded pension systems. Anne has the specific amounts, as do you, I think. Well, you will next week when we get to the budget model. But Anne, if you want to walk folks through that.
Just generally, your normal fixed cost increases beyond the pension, which is not normal. The faculty promotions, the health insurance increase that went into effect last January. We have contractual obligations. We adjust student financial aid, state property insurance. Those are the primary fixed cost increases that total approximately $7.3 million.
Dr. Caboni, I'll ask, there's been an enrollment decline in the last few years. Do you expect that these cuts and improvements to the budget will maybe help fix that?
So we're actually planning for the international enrollment decline that began several years ago to continue into the fall. And that's taken into account in this budget model. That's an important thing to note because it means we won't have to retroactively adjust the budget. We're planning, looking forward, and acknowledging that we're likely to be down again in international students. I think the moves that we're making in global learning, including hiring a new assistant vice provost that will hopefully arrive before the start of the fall semester, is one place where we're working to shore up that international enrollment. The other is really thinking creatively and aggressively, not just about marketing and outreach, but how it is we're leveraging our financial aid. And I think with some of the moves that we're making today, some of the ways we're reaching out to students and to high school students, we will see a rebound in enrollment. Look, and I've said this to alumni everywhere, full professors who know your name, who teach you in your first year, who help you get to class, and applied research experience as soon as you're ready instead of waiting till your senior year or junior year, and something that connects to a career on a campus that's the total college experience, big time football, basketball, student affairs, anything you could imagine we have, and if we don't have it, we'll create it with you. That's tens of thousands of dollars less expensive than other alternatives in the state, and the best college town in the Commonwealth, an hour north of the hottest city in the country. Why wouldn't you want to come to WKU?
Just to clarify, the message that you sent out after the first round, I guess the total reduction was around a little over 13 million.
Right.
After this second round, where does that sit?
So the total amount of the reduction.
And you may have said that already. Just wanted
Yeah,
to
I did. So I can flip back, or I'll let Ann answer.
The combined first round and second round that we have implementation plans is about a little over 27 million.
Okay, thank you.
Can we get clarification again on the exact number of positions also? Is that 10? Is that correct?
There are
10 filled?
Yes.
10 filled positions that will be eliminated in this round. That's in addition to the work that we did in the first round, plus the 20 vacant positions that will be swept as well.
Do you expect any more jobs to be cut after this?
No. This is, as far as I'm concerned, the end of an incredibly painful and difficult year for the institution and for everyone involved. And I will say this, the WKU community has reacted and responded to this remarkably well, both supporting one another and supporting the institution and continuing to engage in educating and supporting our students. And so I'm proud of the entire community. My expectation is we've done the hard work, we've had the reductions, and now we're going to pivot. Now is the time we begin to talk about the new strategic plan that's emerging, the strategic vision for the institution, and how we continue to elevate WKU going forward now that we've been through a challenging year.
Were those vacant positions also determined by the department heads? The ones that, the 20 that were cut now?
So it was a range of folks who were involved in the conversations, vice presidents, deans, some department heads, some unit leaders. So a range of folks. I would want to pinpoint which where, but I do know that it was a broad conversation and up to them. There were some units that decided that there were not reductions they could make in personnel, and they took the majority of the reductions in operating. And we really wanted to have those decisions made as close to the affected organization as possible, which is why it was more of a bottom-up conversation.
Mesonet was on the chopping block before, and then it went back in. It's still in?
So the funding for Mesonet was restored in the final budget, and we're thankful for that. It continues to provide a remarkably important service, not just to the community here in Bowling Green, but to communities across the state who are interested in using those data for agriculture, for road planning, and for other important things in those communities. It's really part of our statewide mission,
Right.
and we're glad it was preserved.
So that's finally in?
It is in.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Rhonda, can I clarify that that was part of the state budget action? That is not related to this today. The mezzanine is part of the state budget.
The state budget, right, directly, okay. Thank you.
He asked about more positions being eliminated, and your answer, does that include the budget, cuts to the budget as well? Do you feel like this will be the last round?
I think we've gotten to a place for the 2018-19 budget that we're in a stable position. We know as an institution we must recruit and we must retain students at a higher rate. All of that will affect the budgets going forward. But our new budget model will actually allocate variations in revenue according to performance. And so one of the reasons we have that step down to the new budget model is that we know as revenue producing units grow or shrink, their revenue will also go up or go down. And so at that point, instead of the institution looking centrally for what a reduction might be or what an increase in revenue might be, it allows deans to plan much more closely for their areas about how they grow and innovate and create new programs and attract more students and retain them. So I think the conversation, because of the new budget model, will be very different than the one we had this past year.
When will the specific list of positions that have been eliminated be released?
Probably toward the end of next week. Obviously, we don't want anyone notified that their position is being eliminated because we've released the list of positions. And so once everyone has been told in person, that will be made public.
And how long will the people who've been eliminated, how long will they have left before they have to be clustering?
They'll have benefits and receive full pay through June 30th.
Okay.
We also will continue to work with the chamber to support those folks in being placed elsewhere. And we also know that if and when there are new positions created, there may be some that come back or will interview and be part of that process as well.
Any more questions?
Thank you all. This has been a challenging semester, and in many ways, I'm looking forward to commencement and celebrating the reason we all do the work that we do as our students walk down the hill and we return to a fantastic old tradition at the university of having commencement in the football stadium. So I hope to see you all there as well.